Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to be changing out these taps. I'm also going to be changing out the actual wash basin, the basin waste, the P-trap, so it's going to be a complete guide. I'm going to take everything out and I'm going to reinstall new for everything. So if I just grab camera a second, you can probably see wash basin isn't in the best condition. There's cracks all around it, taps are leaking. I don't know if you can pick that up on camera. And yeah, generally it just needs a good overhaul. So if you're looking at installing some taps yourself, this video should be perfect for you. Okay, so one of the most important jobs is isolating the water. Now I've got some push fit isolation valves on the back here. So if I just turn them and then test the water out, you can see that's isolated it effectively. Now if you don't have isolation valves, I'll show you how to isolate your water now. So usually under your kitchen sink there's an isolation valve. That's the main feed for the cold water. So if you isolate that, that should then stop the water. Let's go and check it now. So if we go ahead and check the cold feed now, that's absolutely fine. However, if we try the hot water, it's still running. So I just wanted to show you that because sometimes people will think they've isolated both feeds and it's not necessarily correct. So generally if you have a combi boiler, it'll isolate both feeds, but because I've got a header tank up in the loft, it's only isolated the cold water feed. So I just need to go ahead now and isolate the hot water feed. So I'll show you how to do that now. We go over to the airing cupboard, open that up, and there's our isolation valve at the back here. Just need to turn that, and that's the hot water feed now isolated. So if I go over to the hot water tap now, there might be a bit of residual water in there left over, but that's isolated the hot water feed now. So I'm just going to go around with my utility knife and I'm just going to loosen all this sealant around the sink. Next up I've got two screws to remove, one there and one on the other side, so that's what I'm going to do now. And now I'll do the other one on the other side. And then I just cut the silicone around the bottom of the wash basin as well. And just keep prying up on it until it comes off, like so. And now I need to remove this PEX pipe from the isolation valve. So there's a little cap on there, so I just use a flathead screwdriver to take that off, and then push down on the tab and pull up on the PEX pipe. And then I proceed to do the exact same thing on the other pipe. And then next I just need to loosen off the knot on the P-trap and then just pull it away. And now everything's been detached, you can now remove the sink. Just going to give some of this old sealant a clean up now as well. Okay, so just looking at this, the previous way this has been installed is they've used PEX pipe and then they've used a couple of push fit elbows by the look of it and various other fixtures and fittings to attach it to the tap. Now there is a far easier way of doing this and I'll show you that now. So with the water isolated, here are the components I'm going to use. I've got a full bore isolating valve that just allows a better flow of water. You can attach that straight onto your tap tail. A lot of people do, but these have slightly sharp edges. So what I do is I use what's called a tap tail adapter. That slots into there. Tighten the knot down, and then this tap tail will then tighten onto that piece. And then I've got a pipe insert here, so when I take this isolation valve off, I'll pop the pipe insert in, and then this piece I'll tighten down, and all that does is stop the plastic pipe from collapsing. So that's the plan. I'm going to get on with it now. Okay, so I'm just going to install all my components while I've got easy access to the wash basin. So I'll pop my taps in. I've got my 1/2 inch tails there. I've got the P-trap, and then I've got my basin waste, and I've got a basin waste seal kit. You can pick these up from places like Screwfix and Toolstation for a couple of quid. Just ensures you don't get any leaks. And so I'm just going to crack on with that now. So I just put the cold water tap in first and tighten it down by hand. And then I go ahead and do the hot water tap. And then I get my basin waste. And then I pop my sealing kit onto the basin waste threads. And then just get the knot and tighten it down. And now I just get my tap tails and attach the tap tails to the taps. There's one, and there's the other one. And once you've got everything hand tight, you can then go ahead and start nipping it up with some pliers. And I'm just using these wrench pliers from Nipex. I find them really handy. And finally attach a P-trap. Now I use an adjustable P-trap as it's much easier to fit than a rigid one. And then I temporarily put the sink back into position so I can mark my holes for drilling out. Alright, so I've proceeded to drill the holes out. One there and one right there. The way in which I did it is I got a combi drill with a tile drill bit to go through the ceramic. And then once I went through the ceramic tile, I then got my SDS drill. I didn't put it on hammer mode because I don't want to crack the tile. And then I just went through the rest of the block with a 6mm bit. And then just got a couple of wall plugs and just tapped them in the hole with a hammer. So next up, I've just got my isolation valve and I've put my tap tail adapter into it, and I'm just tightening down the knot. So let's go ahead and take off the existing isolation valve. So that's the cap that's been taken off. I just put a towel round here just to catch any residual water, and then I push up on the levers and pull up on the isolation valve, which releases it. I then put my insert in, and then I put my isolation valve on and then tighten up by hand with the knot. And then once it's hand tight, you can then go ahead and tighten it up with the spanner. So that's the first isolation valve fitted. Let's go ahead and move on to the second one. So I use a flathead screwdriver to snap the cap off, then push up on the tab and pry off the isolation valve. I then put my insert in again. Next up, I put the knot on with the olive. Then put your isolation valve on, tighten it up by hand, and then I just use my wrench pliers and spanner to tighten it up. Okay, so now I move the sink back into position and I tighten down the tap tails onto the adapter, first by hand. And then again I tighten it down with my spanner. And remember, we already tightened down the other end of the tap tails earlier on when we had easy access. There is a tool you can use if you're struggling for access, and I'll show you that now. So one thing I did want to mention is if you're having problems with clearance, you can get what's called a tap wrench, and it's adjustable. It has teeth on it, and that will wrap around the nut, and you've got a handle on the bottom here, and that'll just help tighten and nip up any nuts under the sink. So it's a handy little tool, this basin wrench, if you're having trouble with clearance. So now that I've got all the fittings attached, I'm now going to run some silicone down the back of the sink before I tighten it up to the wall. So now I just insert my screw through the sink and into the wall plug and tighten it up. And then do the same on the other side, and you'll see that this presses some of the silicone out from behind the sink, and then we can go ahead and use a profiling tool now to tidy that up. And this just ensures there's good contact between the silicone behind the sink and the wall. So this gives you a nice watertight fitting, and the silicone acts a little bit like an adhesive between the wall and the sink to make sure everything is nice and secure. Alright then, so that's the job complete. As you can see, that silicone profile gauge does a nice job of the silicone line there. I've screwed the plug in. I've turned the water back on downstairs. So we'll pop the water on there. Just have a little look at the back. Make sure there's no leaks, which there isn't. And that's pretty much how you install the sink, taps, P-trap and the basin waste. So if you do like DIY videos, guys, I do have plenty more on my channel, so please consider subscribing. And I just want to say thank you very much for watching.